In competitive sports, athletes push to the absolute limit while fans watch in breathless anticipation. But sometimes, that thin line between triumph and tragedy disappears in a split second. These are the shocking stories of skilled professionals whose final moments unfolded in full view of the very people who came to cheer them on. It was May 6, 2016, when a temporary exhibition layout at a Southern California motorsport facility drew a crowd. Concrete barriers had been set closer than usual along the course, and spectators gathered behind debris fencing near the chicane to watch high-speed runs. The publicly advertised exhibition had drawn hundreds of motorsport enthusiasts to witness professional driving techniques in a controlled environment. Food vendors lined the outer perimeter, while families claimed spots along the safety fencing. The atmosphere carried the excitement of a carnival, mixed with the technical precision of professional racing. Bannon Fisk, a 34-year-old semi-professional racing driver and driving instructor who regularly competed in regional motorsport events, had been invited to showcase precision braking and corner exits during the public exhibition. As a competitive athlete who regularly participated in racing events, Bannon had built a following among local motorsport fans who appreciated his methodical approach under pressure. His years of competition had earned him recognition at the academy where he taught defensive driving techniques. Colleagues described him as someone who never took unnecessary risks, always calculating margins before making any move. During the morning walkthrough, Bannon noted the reduced runoff space near the chicane, but saw no changes made to the barrier placement. Residual fluid from earlier demonstration runs left sections of the track with reduced grip visible under the afternoon light. The safety vehicle remained staged 2 corners away rather than trackside, following standard exhibition protocols. Track officials had assured participants that surface conditions met acceptable standards following cleanup procedures. The barriers, while closer than usual, still provided what organizers considered adequate protection for the planned speeds. Weather conditions remained ideal with minimal wind and clear visibility throughout the circuit. Bannon completed 2 controlled laps without incident, maintaining speeds well within his comfort zone. His fans cheered as he navigated the circuit with textbook precision, his car responding predictably to each input. Engine temperatures remained stable, and tire wear appeared minimal during the initial runs. Spectators who had followed his career applauded his smooth technique as he demonstrated proper racing lines through each corner. On the 3rd lap, approaching the chicane at approximately 90 to 95 miles per hour, the rear tires suddenly lost grip on the reduced grip surface. The car rotated sideways before snapping forward in an uncontrolled slide. Instead of redirecting as intended for exhibition speed, the front end struck the barrier head-on with devastating force. The impact crushed the front of the car inward, transmitting catastrophic force into the cockpit. Emergency responders later confirmed that Bannon sustained unsurvivable blunt force trauma during the collision. The engine continued revving as the vehicle came to rest against the concrete barrier, drawing the attention of spectators as the scene fell silent. Fluid began pooling beneath the front of the car, in plain view of the spectators who had come to watch their favorite athlete perform. Marshals reached the vehicle quickly, but the severity of the impact left no opportunity for life-saving intervention. Bannon was pronounced dead at the scene from massive blunt force trauma, his body still secured in the driver's seat. The demonstration vehicle's safety systems had functioned as designed, but the temporary barrier layout and surface conditions combined to create a perfect storm of circumstances. The exhibition was immediately halted, and spectators were cleared, section by section, as officials documented the barrier placement and surface conditions. Fans who had witnessed the crash stood in stunned silence as the reality set in. Investigators later identified the reduced runoff space and track contamination as contributing factors under review. The exhibition course was closed pending a comprehensive safety review. But Bannon wasn't the only athlete whose precision and experience couldn't overcome a split-second loss of control. High above the canyons of Utah, another skilled professional was about to discover that some margins for error simply don't exist. It was September 14, 2017, when the cliff face on private canyon land in southern Utah stretched into the afternoon sky like a massive stone wall. Inconsistent thermals had been shifting along the canyon throughout the day, creating unpredictable air currents that delayed earlier launches at the site. The scenic overlook on the private property buzzed with onlookers who had gathered after word spread that a Wingsuit flyer intended to jump that afternoon. Adventure sports enthusiasts and spectators lined the viewing area, cameras positioned to capture the glide through the canyon. The vertical drop measured approximately 1,400 feet from launch point to canyon floor, with rocky ledges jutting out at various intervals along the cliff face. Wind patterns had been shifting laterally throughout the afternoon, creating challenging conditions for precision flying. The overlook provided an amphitheater-like setting where dozens of onlookers could observe the entire flight path from above. A handful of experienced photographers and onlookers positioned themselves at vantage points along the overlook, while others stood back from the edge. The atmosphere carried excitement and nervous anticipation as people understood they were witnessing one of the most dangerous sports in the world. Lita Quist, a 29-year-old outdoor adventure guide and experienced wingsuit flyer, had planned a low-altitude glide observed by the assembled crowd. As a competitive wingsuit athlete, Lita had built a reputation among extreme sports fans for her disciplined approach to flight planning and cautious line selection. Her work-guiding adventure tours had given her extensive knowledge of local wind patterns and terrain features. Colleagues knew her as someone who prioritized safety margins over spectacular maneuvers. The launch point offered clear visibility down into the canyon, where spectators could track the entire flight path from above. Leda had completed her pre-flight equipment checks and waited for wind conditions to stabilize before proceeding. Her planned parachute deployment altitude left a narrow margin to extend the wingsuit portion of the flight for the watching crowd. Weather monitoring equipment indicated shifting wind directions along the cliff face, but conditions remained within acceptable parameters for experienced flyers. The afternoon sun provided excellent visibility for both the athlete and spectators. Several experienced jumpers and spotters remained positioned along the canyon rim to watch conditions and relay warnings if needed. Leda launched from the cliff edge, with her fans watching from directly above. The initial glide appeared stable and followed her planned trajectory down into the canyon. Her wingsuit responded normally to control inputs as she navigated the upper portion of the descent. Spectators tracked her progress through the canyon, many recording the demonstration on their devices. During the middle portion of the flight, the left wing of her suit suddenly lost lift due to wind shear near the rock face. The suit rolled abruptly toward the cliff wall, causing an immediate loss of altitude and directional control. The proximity to the rock face eliminated any opportunity for recovery or course correction. Leda struck the cliff face at high speed, leaving no possibility of recovery or parachute deployment. The catastrophic impact with the stone surface caused fatal trauma consistent with a high-speed terrain collision. The body continued its downward trajectory, striking a rocky ledge before reaching the canyon floor. The entire sequence remained visible to spectators positioned on the overlook above. Rope access rescue teams were deployed immediately, but faced significant challenges reaching the impact site. Recovery operations required specialized equipment and coordination between multiple agencies. Spectators were held in place during the recovery process as officials worked to secure the area. Leda was pronounced dead at the scene by rescue personnel who reached the canyon floor. The body remained visible from the overlook during the extended recovery process. Local authorities later determined that wind shear and insufficient altitude margin had contributed to the fatal impact with the cliff face. While Leda's tragedy unfolded in the open air above a canyon miles away in Texas, a different kind of athlete was preparing for what seemed like a routine climb above deep water. The quarry's calm surface would soon reveal hidden dangers that no amount of skill could overcome. It was July 22, 2015, when cliff-lined sections of Lake Travis near Austin, Texas, were being used for deep water soloing. Natural limestone faces rose directly from the reservoir, but fluctuating water levels had altered depths along the base of the cliffs. The area attracted climbers seeking the thrill of deep water soloing, where falls resulted in plunges into deep water rather than reliance on ropes or safety equipment. Spectators gathered on docks and along the rocky shoreline to watch climbers tackle the challenging lines. The informal gathering drew dozens of climbers and spectators who came specifically to watch familiar faces attempt challenging lines. Submerged rock shelves and uneven terrain lay several feet below the surface, invisible to climbers above due to shifting reservoir levels. The primary cliff face used for climbing rose approximately 55 feet above the waterline. Families and climbing enthusiasts positioned themselves along the shoreline and nearby access points to capture the action. Rexton Glober, a 31-year-old fitness trainer and competitive recreational climber, planned to attempt one of the more challenging lines facing the main spectator area. As an athlete who regularly competed in regional climbing events, Rexton had developed a following among local fans who appreciated his explosive and dynamic movement style. His athletic approach to routes with aggressive techniques consistently impressed crowds who gathered to watch him climb. The route Rexton selected featured a series of lateral moves near the top that required careful foot placement and sustained grip strength. Local climbers believed the water depth provided sufficient clearance, though actual conditions had changed as reservoir levels fluctuated. Fans positioned themselves on docks and viewing areas that provided clear sightlines to watch their favorite athlete tackle the cliff face. Many had followed Rexton's competitive climbing career and anticipated another dynamic performance from the skilled athlete. Rexton began his ascent with characteristic intensity, powering through the lower sections with fluid movements that drew appreciative comments from his watching fans. His athletic technique emphasized explosive pulls and dynamic reaches that covered ground quickly. The route progressed smoothly through the middle sections as spectators cheered their favorite climber. Near the top of the route, during a crucial lateral move, Rexton's right foot slipped from its placement on the limestone surface. The sudden loss of support caused him to peel backward from the rock face, initially falling feet first toward the water below. The 55-foot drop provided several seconds of fall time, during which his body began to rotate. As he descended, Rexton's body rotated mid-fall until his back faced the water surface at an angled orientation. The actual water depth measured just under 12 feet, providing insufficient clearance for a safe entry. His lower body struck the water first at high velocity, with the combination of axial compression and rotational force causing catastrophic traumatic injuries as his momentum carried downward through the shallow depth. The rotation continued to force his head toward the submerged rock shelf that lay hidden beneath the surface. His body struck a submerged rock ledge with devastating force, compounding the injuries sustained during the fall. The severity of the injuries rendered him immediately unconscious, and his body sank without resurfacing. Swimmers positioned near the base of the cliffs reached him within seconds of the impact. They pulled his unresponsive body onto the nearest dock, where immediate assessment revealed labored, irregular breathing and a weak, thready pulse. Fans who had come to watch their athletic hero perform stood in shocked silence as his condition rapidly deteriorated. Despite urgent resuscitation efforts by nearby climbers and later arriving responders, Rexton's breathing ceased and his heart stopped within minutes of the impact. Medical personnel pronounced him dead at the scene in full view of his supporters. Subsequent investigation revealed a discrepancy between assumed water depths and actual conditions. Access to the cliff area was immediately restricted, pending a comprehensive safety review. Investigators later determined that the fatal injuries were caused by the combined effects of a high-velocity fall into shallow water and impact with submerged rock formations. We've got more disturbing athlete tragedies coming up, so hit that subscribe button if you want to see how moments meant to inspire millions can turn fatal in front of the crowd. It was August 19, 2018, when the public waterfront course in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, baked under an oppressive 94-degree heat. The triathlon event had drawn hundreds of participants to compete in the open registration race that wound through the city's lakefront district. Air temperatures had been climbing steadily throughout the morning, with multiple athletes already requiring heat-related medical attention before the main wave of competitors even began their transitions. The transition area buzzed with congested activity as athletes moved between swimming, cycling, and running segments of the race. Spectators lined the course perimeter, many seeking shade under portable canopies, while others positioned themselves near water stations to cheer on family members and friends. Algae growth from recent warm weather had made the swim exit ramp noticeably slick. Medical tents had been strategically placed throughout the course, with additional cooling stations established due to the extreme temperature conditions. Event organizers had issued heat advisories to all participants, though most athletes continued pushing through discomfort. Vesper Track, a 41-year-old civil engineer and competitive age group triathlete, had registered for the event months in advance as part of his seasonal racing schedule. Known among the local triathlon community for his endurance-focused training approach, Vesper typically maintained steady pacing that allowed him to push through fatigue and challenging conditions. His engineering background had instilled a methodical approach to race strategy. though he sometimes underestimated environmental stressors on athletic performance. The swim portion of the race had been completed in warmer than normal water temperatures, adding to the overall heat stress experienced by participants. Vesper had exited the water slower than his typical pace, showing early signs of heat-related fatigue that he attributed to normal race day exertion. Transition volunteers offered water assistance at the swim exit, which he declined. Spectators gathered densely around the transition area, creating an energetic atmosphere as athletes moved between race segments. Many fans had followed Vesper's competitive career and positioned themselves to capture his transition performance. The concrete transition surface radiated additional heat. As Vesper ran toward the transition mat after completing the swim segment, witnesses observed him stumble unexpectedly on the level surface. He fell forward with significant force, striking both his chest and head on the concrete pavement. The impact drew immediate attention from nearby spectators and volunteers who moved to assist. Vesper attempted to rise from the pavement but collapsed again within seconds of standing. Witnesses reported observing muscle rigidity and convulsions that indicated severe neurological distress. Vomiting followed immediately, accompanied by increasingly irregular breathing patterns that suggested systemic failure. The progression of symptoms accelerated rapidly as his core body temperature reached critical levels. Spectators who had gathered to cheer their favorite athlete instead found themselves witnessing a medical emergency unfolding in real time. His breathing became labored and erratic before stopping entirely. Vesper lost consciousness within minutes of the initial fall. Medical personnel initiated immediate cooling protocols and cardiopulmonary resuscitation directly on the transition pavement, surrounded by concerned spectators and fellow athletes. Emergency responders worked intensively, cycling through compression sequences and attempting to stabilize his core temperature with ice packs and cold water immersion techniques. Despite aggressive resuscitation efforts that continued for nearly 20 minutes, the interventions proved unsuccessful against the severity of the heat-induced organ failure. Vesper was pronounced dead at the scene, with his body remaining on the transition surface as medical teams completed their protocols. The race was briefly paused and rerouted to allow emergency responders access. Official investigation determined that exertional heat stroke leading to cardiac arrest had caused the death. Medical examiners noted that the combination of extreme ambient temperature, physical exertion, and inadequate cooling had created fatal conditions despite the athlete's previous experience with endurance events. Unlike Vesper's struggle against invisible heat exhaustion on solid ground in an Iowa arena, another athlete was about to face a very different kind of mechanical challenge that would unfold in spectacular fashion before a packed crowd. It was June 10, 2017, when the county fairground arena in Des Moines, Iowa, came alive under the bright lights of a nighttime freestyle motocross showcase. The packed arena buzzed with excitement as families and motorsport enthusiasts filled the bleachers to witness death-defying aerial stunts performed by professional riders. The jump setup featured a takeoff ramp positioned approximately 75 feet from the landing ramp, with the landing surface pitched steeper than standard configurations. Earlier in the day, crew members had adjusted the takeoff ramp angle to provide increased lift for the featured jumps, creating more spectacular aerial displays for the paying audience. The arena's concrete floor had been covered with protective padding, though the primary safety relied on riders successfully reaching the designated landing zones. The evening's lineup featured several experienced riders performing increasingly complex maneuvers as the show progressed. Fans had positioned themselves throughout the arena to capture optimal viewing angles of their favorite athletes launching into the air. The atmosphere carried the electric energy of a live motorsport event, with engine noise and crowd cheers echoing off the arena walls. Minda Scragg, a 26-year-old part-time mechanic and competitive freestyle motocross rider, had been scheduled to perform one of the featured jumps during the showcase. Known throughout the regional FMX community for her risk-heavy and aggressive approach to aerial stunts, Minda had built a following among fans who appreciated her willingness to push boundaries that other riders avoided. Her mechanical background gave her intimate knowledge of motorcycle performance, though her competitive personality often led her to attempt maneuvers at the edge of safety margins. The jump Minda planned required precise speed control and body positioning to clear the 75-foot gap while maintaining proper orientation for landing. Her motorcycle had been tuned specifically for the arena's conditions, with suspension settings adjusted for the steeper landing ramp configuration. Spectators filled the arena seating areas, many holding cameras and phones to record their favorite athlete's performance. The crowd included families with children experiencing their first live motocross event, as well as dedicated fans who had followed Minda's competitive career. As Minda approached the takeoff ramp, she accelerated harder than during her previous practice runs, seeking additional height and distance for a more impressive display. Engine revs spiked noticeably at launch as the motorcycle left the ramp with increased velocity. The additional speed created more lift than anticipated, causing the bike to over-rotate backward during the aerial phase. Mid-air, the motorcycle's front wheel pointed skyward while the rear wheel dropped below the horizontal plane. The over-rotation continued throughout the flight, placing both rider and machine in an inverted orientation as they approached the landing ramp. The steep pitch of the landing surface provided no opportunity for recovery from the compromised position. The rear wheel struck the landing ramp edge first, creating a violent pivot point that snapped Minda forward with tremendous force. Her helmet struck the ramp surface with devastating impact, forcing her neck into extreme hyperextension beyond normal limits. The motorcycle followed the same trajectory and came down onto Minda's upper torso, compounding the trauma. The combined mass created additional crushing forces to her chest. No movement was observed from the rider following the impact. Safety crew members reached the landing area within seconds, finding Minda unresponsive with no detectable pulse or respiration. After rapid assessment confirmed the absence of vital signs, she was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. The remaining scheduled jumps were immediately canceled as arena staff worked to clear the accident site and manage the crowd of shocked spectators. Local investigators documented the ramp angles and motorcycle speed estimates to determine contributing factors to the fatal over-rotation. Official findings attributed the death to fatal neck injuries sustained during the violent hyperextension on impact, with secondary chest trauma from the combined weight of rider and motorcycle. The investigation noted that the increased takeoff speed and modified ramp angle had created conditions beyond the rider's ability to control. Thanks for watching. Want to see more? Click on your screen now.